The decree was read at dawn, in front of the entire court. Marianne stood perfectly still as her father's voice carried across the stone hall calm, measured, final. By order of the council and blessing of the crown, Marianne Ashford will be given to the Alpha Vampire as tribute. This union secures our borders and honors the ancient pact. No trial. No appeal. Just her name spoken like an expense. She didn't flinch. She'd learned long ago that reaction only made it worse. Around her the court remained silent. Not in protest, in acceptance. A few nodded. Others looked away, their relief barely hidden. Her sisters stood near the dais, radiant in their mourning silks, their faces carefully blank. They had known. Of course they had known. This hadn't been decided this morning. It had been decided long before. Her father met her gaze for only a moment, long enough to confirm he felt nothing. Not regret. Not sorrow. Just the satisfied calm of a man who had solved a problem. The Alpha does not accept brides, someone had whispered once when she was younger. He accepts sacrifices. They said he lived in the mountains where light didn't reach. That he hadn't been seen in decades. That the few who'd been sent to him had never returned. Not even their bones. The stories were consistent. The Alpha Vampire did not negotiate. He did not show mercy. He took what was owed. And now she was what was owed. Marianne's hands were cold despite the heavy velvet they dressed her in. The gown was beautiful, pale silver, embroidered with moonflowers, but it felt like a shroud. They had prepared her like something precious, but she knew better. She was a solution. A discard wrapped in ceremony. Her youngest sister, Elise, had been given a tour of the southern estates last month. Her middle sister, Celia, had been promised to a duke. Both had futures that glittered. Marianne had been given a monster. Her father stepped down from the dais, his boots echoing in the silence. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint lines around his mouth, the only sign he was aging at all. "You will leave at first light tomorrow," he said quietly. "An escort will take you to the border. After that, you'll go alone." She opened her mouth. Not to beg, she had more pride than that, but to speak. To say something. Anything. He turned away before she could. "Prepare her," he said to the steward. And just like that it was done. By dawn the next morning, the castle doors had already closed behind her. The woods ahead were dark, older than memory. Somewhere deep within them the Alpha waited. They had sent her to die. But Marianne Ashford would not die easily. Chapter 2: The Path to Shadow. The escort left her at the border stone. It was ancient, taller than a man, carved with symbols no one could read anymore. Beyond it, the forest thickened into something that didn't feel like nature. The trees were too still. The air too quiet. "This is as far as we go," the captain said. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Marianne looked at the three men who'd ridden with her in silence for 2 days. Not one of them had spoken to her directly. Not one had offered comfort or even acknowledgement. They treated her like cargo. Now they were leaving her. "The path continues north," the captain added, gesturing vaguely into the darkness. "Follow it until you reach the gates." And then, he finally looked at her. There was pity in his face, but it was the useless kind, the kind that changed nothing. "Then you knock." He turned his horse before she could respond. The others followed. Within moments they were gone, swallowed by the trees behind her. Marianne stood alone at the edge of the world. The forest was worse than the stories. It wasn't the darkness, she'd expected that. It was the wrongness. The way the branches grew at angles that didn't make sense. The way her footsteps echoed when they shouldn't. The way she could feel something watching even though nothing moved. She kept walking. The path was narrow, overgrown, barely visible in places. But it was there. Someone or something had walked this way before. Her gown caught on thorns. The hem grew heavy with mud. She didn't stop to fix it. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time felt strange here, like it didn't follow the same rules. And then she saw them. The gates. They rose out of the mist like something pulled from a nightmare. Black iron, taller than the trees. Twisted into shapes that might have been wolves or men or something in between. They were open. Just barely. As if they'd been waiting. Marianne's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back. to run. But there was nothing behind her except a father who discarded her and a court that had watched in silence. She stepped forward. The gates didn't move, but she felt the shift the moment she crossed the threshold. The air changed. Colder. Heavier. The castle beyond was massive, carved from stone so dark it seemed to drink the light. No candles burned in the windows. No smoke rose from the chimneys. It looked abandoned. It looked like a tomb. Marianne climbed the steps slowly, her breath misting in the unnatural cold. At the top, a single door waited, wood so old it had turned black, bound with iron that hadn't rusted. She raised her hand and knocked. The sound echoed through the silence like a gunshot. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the door opened. Not slowly, not with a creak. All at once. And standing in the darkness beyond was him. Chapter 3: The Alpha. He was nothing like the stories. They had said monster. They had said beast. They had painted him as something twisted, something broken by centuries of darkness and hunger. They had been wrong. The man standing before her was terrifyingly beautiful. Tall, broad-shouldered, with features carved from shadow and moonlight. His hair was dark, falling just past his collar. His eyes, silver, luminous, ancient, fixed on her with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. He looked like a king who'd forgotten what mercy was. "Marian Ashford," he said. His voice was low, quiet, but it filled the entire hall. It wasn't a question. Yes. Her own voice sounded small in comparison. She hated it. He stepped aside without a word, a silent command. She hesitated for only a heartbeat, then crossed the threshold. The door closed behind her. The castle was vast and empty. He led her through corridors lit by nothing. No torches, no candles, yet she could see. The stone walls gleamed faintly, as if the darkness itself provided light. Portraits lined the halls, faces she didn't recognize, watching with painted eyes. He didn't speak, didn't look back to see if she followed. She did anyway. They climbed a staircase that spiraled upward for what felt like miles. Her legs burned. Her breath came shorter. He moved as if gravity didn't touch him. Finally, he stopped in front of a door. "This is yours," he said, pushing it open. The room beyond was unexpected. A fire burned in the hearth, the first warmth she'd felt since entering the forest. The bed was large, draped in dark velvet. A window overlooked the mountains, where the moon hung impossibly bright. It was a guest room, not a cell. Marian turned to face him, confusion breaking through her fear. "I don't understand." "You will stay here," he said simply. "Why?" His eyes narrowed slightly, as if the question surprised him. "Because you were sent to me." "I was sent to die." Something shifted in his expression, too fast to name. "Is that what they told you?" They didn't have to. For a long moment he studied her. Not the way her father had, cataloging her failures. Not the way the court had, dismissing her worth. He looked at her like he was trying to solve something. "You're afraid," he said finally. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes." "Good." He stepped back into the hallway. "Fear will keep you from doing anything foolish." "Wait." He paused. "What happens now?" Her voice was steadier than she felt. "Why am I here? What do you want from me?" The alpha vampire looked at her for a long moment. Then impossibly he smiled. "It wasn't kind." "That," he said quietly, "depends entirely on you." The door closed. And Marianne was alone. Chapter 4: The First Night. Marianne didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the mountains turn from black to deep blue as something that might have been dawn approached. But the sun never came. Just a pale lightning, as if the sky here had forgotten what morning meant. The room was too quiet, too still. She tried the door once, unlocked. The hallway beyond had been empty, stretching in both directions into shadow. She'd closed the door again and stepped back. Not a prisoner then, but not free either. She was something else. She just didn't know what yet. The knock came without warning. 3 sharp raps, deliberate and cold. Marian stood quickly, her heart jumping. "Come in." The door opened, but it wasn't him. A woman entered, older, gray-haired, dressed in black with a ring of keys at her waist. Her face was lined but sharp, her eyes assessing. "I'm Mrs. Hale," she said briskly. I manage the household. You'll take your meals in the eastern room. I'll show you. Marianne started. You'll want to change first. Mrs. Hale's gaze swept over the ruined gown, mud-stained and torn. There are clothes in the wardrobe. Choose something practical. She turned to leave. Wait. Marianne's voice came out sharper than intended. Where is he? Mrs. Hale paused, her hand on the door. The master keeps his own hours. You'll see him when he wishes to be seen. I need to speak with him. Then you'll wait like everyone else. The door closed. Marianne stood there, anger flickering beneath her fear. She'd been brought here, abandoned, left in a room with no answers and a housekeeper who spoke like she was an inconvenience. Fine. If they wanted her to wait, she'd wait. But she wouldn't do it quietly. The eastern room was smaller than she'd expected. A table set for one, a single window overlooking the courtyard below. The food was simple but well-made. Bread, cheese, fruit that looked too perfect to be real. She ate slowly, thinking. Mrs. Hale had said household, which meant there were others here. Staff. People who served him. People who might have answers. You're the tribute. Marianne turned sharply. A young man stood in the doorway, lean, dark-haired, maybe a few years older than her. He leaned against the frame like he belonged there, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I'm Marianne, she said carefully. I know. He stepped inside, moving with a predator's grace. Everyone knows. You're all they've talked about for days. Who's everyone? The staff. The others. He tilted his head, studying her the way the alpha had, like she was a puzzle. You're not what we expected. What did you expect? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Someone weaker. Marianne set down her fork slowly. And what are you? Julian, he said. I serve the master. Is that what I'm supposed to do? Serve him. Julian's smile widened. No, he said quietly. You're supposed to survive him. He left before she could respond. Chapter 5: The Rules. Marianne found the library by accident. She'd been wandering, testing the boundaries of her new prison. Every door she tried opened. Every hallway led somewhere. The castle was a maze, but it wasn't locked. It was waiting. The library stretched 3 stories high, lined with books that looked older than kingdoms. Dust motes drifted through the pale light from windows she hadn't seen from outside. She ran her fingers along the spines, reading titles in languages she didn't recognize. Looking for something, she spun. The alpha stood in the doorway, perfectly still. He moved like silence itself. She hadn't heard him approach. I was exploring, she said, lifting her chin. No one told me I couldn't. You can't. He stepped inside. I'm telling you now. Marianne's hands curled into fists at her sides. Then what can I do? Sit in my room? Eat meals alone? Wait for you to decide my purpose? His eyes narrowed. You're angry. I'm owed answers. You're owed nothing. The words hit like a slap. But Marianne didn't back down. She'd spent her entire life swallowing silence. She was done. Then send me back, she said. If I'm worthless to you, let me go. No. Why not? He moved closer. Not threatening but deliberate. Each step measured. Because a pact was made. Your father offered you. I accepted. That binding doesn't break simply because you're uncomfortable. A pact. Her laugh was bitter. I didn't agree to anything. Your consent was never required. The truth of it settled between them like frost. Marianne met his gaze and refused to look away. What do you want from me? For a long moment he didn't answer. Then, I haven't decided yet. He moved to the window, his back to her. Outside, the mountains stretched endlessly, sharp and unforgiving. There are rules here, he said quietly. If you're going to stay, you'll follow them. Do I have a choice? No. Marianne crossed her arms. Then tell me. He turned, silver eyes catching the light. You don't enter the West Wing. You don't leave the castle grounds. You don't ask the staff about me. Why not? Because I said so. Her jaw tightened. Anything else? Yes. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him. Close enough to see that his chest didn't rise and fall with breath. He wasn't alive. Not the way she was. You don't lie to me, he said softly. Ever. I'll know. Then I have a rule too. His eyebrow lifted, surprised perhaps or amused. Do you? You don't treat me like I'm nothing. Her voice was steady now, certain. I may be here against my will. I may be bound by a pact I never agreed to. But I am not nothing. Silence stretched between them. Then impossibly he smiled. No, he said quietly. You're not. He left her standing in the library, heart pounding, hands shaking. For the first time since arriving, Marian felt something other than fear. She felt seen. Chapter 6. The West Wing. Marian lasted 3 days before she broke the rule. She told herself it was curiosity, that she had a right to understand the place she was trapped in. That knowledge was survival. But the truth was simpler. She hated being told what she couldn't do. The West Wing was easy to find. Mrs. Hale had mentioned it twice while giving instructions, her voice dropping each time. Julian had glanced toward it once during dinner, then looked away quickly. Whatever was there, they feared it, which meant it mattered. The hallway was colder than the rest of the castle. Marian wrapped her shawl tighter as she walked, her footsteps echoing on stone. The doors here were different, heavier, older, sealed with iron that had oxidized to black. She tried the first one. Locked. The second. Locked. The third opened. The room beyond was empty except for a single painting. It dominated the far wall. A woman in a white dress, standing in a garden full of roses. She was beautiful in a way that made Marianne's chest tighten. Dark hair, pale skin, eyes that seemed to follow her across the room. And around her neck, a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. Marianne stepped closer, studying the woman's face. There was something familiar in her expression, not the features themselves, but the emotion behind them. Sadness. Deep and permanent. You shouldn't be here. Marianne whirled. The alpha stood in the doorway, perfectly still. But something had changed. The careful control he always wore had cracked. He looked furious. I told you. I know what you told me. Marianne's heart hammered, but she didn't move. Who is she? His jaw tightened. Leave. Not until you answer me. Leave. The word wasn't loud, but it filled the room like thunder. The walls seemed to shudder. Marianne flinched but held her ground. Why does it matter? It's just a painting. It's not just a painting. His voice was low, dangerous. And you have no right to be here. Then tell me why. The silence that followed was suffocating. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. She was my wife. The word landed like a stone. Marianne stared at him, at the ancient grief etched into his features. What happened to her? She died. He stepped into the room, moving toward the painting with something that looked like reverence. A long time ago. How? His hand lifted, almost touching the canvas, then fell. Because of what I am. Understanding dawned slowly, coldly. You killed her. No. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something other than control in them. She saw pain. I couldn't save her, he said quietly. And she paid the price for loving something that shouldn't be loved. He turned and walked past her toward the door. Don't come here again, he said without looking back. Then he was gone. Marianne stood alone in the room, staring at the woman in the painting. The woman who'd loved a monster. And died for it. Chapter 7. The Shift. Marianne didn't see him for 2 days after that. She took her meals alone, walked the gardens alone, sat in the library with books she couldn't read, waiting for footsteps that never came. Mrs. Hale said nothing, but her looks said enough. You crossed a line. Julian was more direct. Whatever you did, he said on the third morning, bringing her breakfast himself. Fix it. I didn't do anything, Marianne said, though the lie felt weak even to her. He hasn't left his chamber since you went to the West Wing. Julian set the tray down harder than necessary. The master doesn't hide. He doesn't grieve. Not anymore. Maybe he should. Julian's eyes flashed. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. I can't. He moved toward the door, then paused. But I'll tell you this, whatever you think you know about him, you're wrong. And if you keep pushing, you'll regret it. He left her with that. She found him in the garden at midnight. He stood beneath a dead tree. its branches skeletal against the stars. He didn't turn when she approached, but she knew he heard her. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" His voice was flat, emotionless. "For going where I wasn't supposed to. For asking questions I had no right to ask. And yet you're here again. Doing exactly that." Marian stopped a few feet away. "I'm here because I don't understand." "What's there to understand?" He finally looked at her. "You saw the painting. You know what I am. You know what happens to people who get too close. She loved you. And it killed her. Did you love her?" The question hung between them like a blade. "More than anything," he said quietly. "Which is why it should never have happened. Why it will never happen again." Marian stepped closer. "Is that why you accepted the tribute? To keep yourself from caring about anyone else?" His laugh was bitter. "I accepted the tribute because it was required. Because your father was desperate enough to offer his least valuable daughter to secure his borders. Because the pact demands a sacrifice every century, and you were convenient." The words should have hurt. A week ago they would have. But Marianne had stopped believing she was worthless. "You're lying," she said calmly. His eyes narrowed. "Excuse me. You said I couldn't lie to you. That you'd know." She held his gaze. "It works both ways. You're not keeping me here because of a pact. You're keeping me here because you're lonely." The silence stretched impossibly long. Then he moved, faster than thought, closing the distance between them until she could see the silver burning in his eyes. "Careful, Marianne," he whispered. "You're standing very close to something dangerous." She didn't step back. "I've been close to dangerous things my whole life," she said. "At least you're honest about it." Something shifted in his expression. Not softening, but opening. "You should go inside," he said finally. "Will you?" He smiled, small, genuine, devastating. "Eventually." Chapter 8: The Invitation. He was waiting outside her door the next morning. Marianne nearly dropped her water pitcher when she opened it and found him there. Leaning against the wall, arms crossed, looking like he'd been there for hours. "Get dressed," he said. "Something warm." She blinked. "Why?" "Because I'm asking." It wasn't a command. Not quite. But close enough that she didn't argue. 20 minutes later, she followed him through corridors she'd never seen. Downstairs that spiraled deeper into the mountain itself. The air grew colder with each step, until her breath misted in front of her. "Where are we going?" she asked. "You wanted to understand." He didn't look back. "I'm showing you." They emerged into a cavern so vast she couldn't see the ceiling. And it was full of them. Vampires. Dozens, maybe hundreds, moving through the space with that same predatory grace Julian had. Some spoke in low voices. Others sat alone, reading or writing by lamplight. A few sparred in a clearing, their movements too fast to follow. They all stopped when the Alpha entered. Every head turned. Every conversation died. Marian felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. "This is the sanctum," he said quietly. "Where my people live. Where they've lived for centuries, hidden from your world." She stared at the faces watching her. Some curious, some hostile, all ancient in ways she couldn't comprehend. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you asked who I am." He gestured to the cavern, to the vampires watching. "This is the answer. I am their Alpha, their king, their keeper. Everything I do, every choice I make, is for them." A woman approached, tall, elegant, with white blonde hair and eyes like ice. "Master, is this wise?" "Elena." His tone didn't change, but the woman stilled. "This is Marianne. She's under my protection. A human." Elena's lip curled slightly. "Here." "Yes." The single word silenced whatever objection she'd been forming. Elena's gaze shifted to Marianne, assessing and cold. "Be careful, little tribute," she said softly. "We're not like the ones in your stories. We don't play with our food." "Elena." The warning in his voice was unmistakable. She smiled and walked away. They didn't stay long. He led her back through the tunnels in silence, but something had changed. The walls between them felt thinner now. When they reached her hallway, he stopped. "You wanted honesty," he said. "So here it is. I brought you here because the pact required it. But I kept you here because He paused, searching for words. Because for the first time in a century, someone looked at me and didn't see a monster first. Marianne's heart stuttered. What did I see? I don't know yet. His eyes met hers, silver and endless. But I'd like to find out. He turned to leave. Wait, she said. He paused. What's your name? For the first time since she'd arrived, he smiled like he meant it. Lucian. Chapter 9: The Unraveling. Marianne started spending her evenings in the library. So did Lucian. It began accidentally. She'd been reading by the fire when he appeared, selecting a book without acknowledging her. But he sat across from her instead of leaving. And the next night he did it again. They didn't speak much at first. Just existed in the same space, the silence comfortable rather than tense. Until the fourth night when she broke it. Did you ever regret it? She asked. He looked up from his book. Regret what? Becoming this. Lucian set the book aside slowly. Every day for the first century. Then I stopped counting. What changed? I realized regret was a luxury I couldn't afford. He leaned back, shadows playing across his face. When you live forever, you either make peace with what you are or let it destroy you. And you made peace? I made choices. His eyes found hers. There's a difference. Marianne closed her own book. The woman in the painting. How did she die? She expected him to shut down, to walk away like he had before. But he didn't. Illness, he said quietly. Something simple. Something that would have been nothing if she'd been like me. His jaw tightened. I could have turned her. She begged me to. But I knew what that would mean. An eternity of watching everyone she loved age and die while she stayed frozen. So I refused. And she hated you for it? No. The word was barely a whisper. She forgave me. Which was worse? The pain in his voice was so raw that Marianne felt it in her own chest. You were trying to protect her, she said. I was being selfish. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. I couldn't bear the thought of her becoming what I am. Of her hating herself the way I did. So I let her die instead. His hands curled into fists. Tell me, Marianne. What kind of love chooses death over eternity? The kind that cares more about someone else's soul than your own loneliness. He turned, surprise flickering across his features. She must have known that, Marianne continued, standing. She must have understood why you said no, even if it hurt. Otherwise she wouldn't have forgiven you. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She moved closer. Because I understand what it's like to be chosen for the wrong reasons. To be valued only for what you can give someone else. She stopped in front of him. But you valued her for who she was. Even when it meant losing her. Lucian stared at her, something unreadable in his eyes. You're wrong about one thing, he said finally. What? Your father didn't send his least valuable daughter. His hand lifted, almost touching her face, then fell. He sent the one he feared most. Why would he fear me? Lucian's smile was sad and knowing. Because you refused to be broken. Chapter 10: The Choice. The letter arrived on the 10th day. Mrs. Hale brought it to Marianne's room. Her expression unreadable. From your father. Marianne's hands trembled as she broke the seal. The message was brief. The pact is fulfilled. You may return home. A carriage will arrive at week's end. She read it 3 times, waiting for the relief to come. It didn't. She found Lucian in the garden, standing beneath the dead tree where they'd spoken that first night. I'm being recalled, she said. He didn't turn. I know. You knew before I did. The pact required only that you arrive. That you stay long enough for the binding to take hold. His voice was carefully neutral. It's been fulfilled. So I'm free to go. Yes. Marianne waited for him to say more. To ask her to stay. To give her a reason. He didn't. That's it, she asked. After everything. After showing me your world, after telling me about her. You're just going to let me leave? What would you have me do? He finally faced her, and she saw the control it took to keep his expression blank. Chain you here? Make you a prisoner in truth instead of circumstance. You could ask me to stay. I won't. The words cut deeper than she'd expected. Why not? Because I've already destroyed one woman I cared about. His eyes burned silver. I won't do it again. I'm not her. No, he said quietly. You're braver. Stronger. Which means you deserve better than this. Better than me. Marian stepped closer. Anger and something else, something dangerous rising in her chest. Don't I get to decide what I deserve? You're 19 years old, Marianne. You've barely lived. I've lived enough to know what I want. And what's that? She closed the distance between them, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. To be seen. To be valued. To matter to someone. You matter to your family. My family threw me away. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. But you see me. Actually see me. Not as a disappointment or a burden or a sacrifice. Her voice dropped. You see me as I am. Lucian's control cracked. Don't do this. Do what? Make me hope. The rawness in his voice nearly undid her. I've spent a century learning not to hope. Don't ask me to unlearn it. Then I won't ask. Marian reached up, her hand touching his face. Cold, perfect, afraid. I'm telling you. I'm staying. Marianne. I'm staying, she repeated, certain now. Not because of a pact. Not because I have nowhere else to go. But because for the first time in my life, I'm choosing something for myself. His hand covered hers, holding it against his cheek. This won't be easy, he whispered. Nothing worth having ever is. And when he kissed her, gentle, desperate, eternal, Marianne knew she'd made the right choice. Epilogue. 6 months later, the court received word that Marianne Ashford had died in the mountains. Her father held a perfunctory memorial. Her sisters wore black for the required period. The court whispered about the tragedy for a week, then forgot. None of them knew the truth. That in a castle carved from shadow, a girl who'd been sent to die had learned to live. That the alpha vampire, who'd spent centuries alone, had finally found someone worth eternity. That Marianne Ashford hadn't died at all. She'd simply chosen a different life. One where she wasn't the unwanted daughter or the convenient sacrifice. One where she was queen. And when visitors came to the border stone years later, claiming to have seen lights in the ancient castle, claiming to have heard laughter echoing through the mountains, the new lord dismissed them as superstitious fools. But deep in the forest, in a castle that shouldn't exist, Marianne smiled. Let them think her dead. She'd never been more alive. Then,